Hey guys, tonight we drift back into a world where the stars are brighter than any lantern, where the wind pushes smoke from campfires into your hair, and where the idea of a springy mattress belongs centuries in the future. You are lying down in the Middle Ages, and instead of memory foam, you're granted the soft crackle of straw beneath your back. It pricks in awkward little spots, one bit jabbing your shoulder, another tickling your neck, but somehow it's comforting, earthy, grounding. You probably wouldn't survive the fleas, but for the moment, let's pretend. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're watching this far away, maybe drop your location and local time in the comments, so we can see who else is lying down with us under these flickering shadows. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The straw shifts as you turn, and you realize it's not just straw, but hay mixed with dried herbs. Lavender if you're lucky, nettles if you're not. In fact, peasants often stuffed their mattresses, if you could call them that, with whatever plants they had handy. Historians still argue whether this made sleep healthier, warding off pests, or whether it simply meant you woke up itchy. Either way, the smell is thick and honest, a perfume of farm life pressed into your dreams. A low fire sputters nearby. Not a roaring blaze, it would waste wood you cannot afford, but a small campfire or hearth smoldering through the night, sending ribbons of smoke into the rafters, or, if you are outside, toward the stars. People slept close to the fire, not just for warmth, but to keep predators away, human and animal alike. You hear a dog shifting at the edge of the light, circling 3 times before flopping down with a sigh that feels strangely familiar. As you roll onto your side, you notice the room, or field, depending on your luck, is shared. Privacy is rare. Whole families sleep in the same chamber, sometimes in the same bed. Parents, children, even the occasional visiting cousin pressed shoulder to shoulder under scratchy woolen blankets. It sounds awkward to you, but the concept of personal space has not been invented yet. One quirky tidbit: some households believed that sleeping too far apart allowed evil spirits to slip in between. So togetherness wasn't just cozy, it was spiritual safety too. The air is cooler now, your breath a faint mist in the dark. Somewhere a rooster coughs in his sleep. Yes, they do that. And you wonder how anyone ever truly managed rest. Sleep back then wasn't a straight 8 hours. It came in fragments, with people waking after a few hours, talking, praying, even checking on the animals before settling again. That rhythm of first sleep and second sleep shaped the night for centuries. Scholars still puzzle over whether broken sleep was healthier for the body or just a survival mechanism in a restless world. A breeze shifts the thatch roof above you, a soft scratching sound like fingernails over wood. Dust falls down, tickling your cheek, and you smile at the absurdity. Compared to your memory foam mattress and blackout curtains, this arrangement seems laughable. And yet, here you are, eyes drooping, imagining yourself among peasants who counted themselves lucky to have straw instead of cold dirt. As your thoughts slow, the fire crackles once more, a rhythmic metronome for your drifting mind. Maybe tonight you will dream of kings with feather beds, or maybe you'll just dream of stew left too long by the hearth. Either way, the straw creaks under your shifting weight. and the night deepens. And if you're still awake, now is a good moment to gently press that like button and subscribe, so you don't miss the rest of these meandering, soothing histories. Who knows? You might even learn while you nap. The rooster crows too early, as always, and you find yourself blinking into the dark that still clings to the rafters. It's not dawn yet. Your bones know it. The faint chill knows it. But the rhythm of medieval life isn't built around your comfort. You roll over in the hay, feeling the scratch against your cheek, and the faint scent of yesterday's smoke still lingering on your clothes. Outside, the bells of the parish church might ring before long, tugging half the village out of slumber, whether they want it or not. You stretch, and the straw shifts with a soft groan, as though the bed is alive and equally tired. Here's the thing. Sleep in this age rarely comes in a neat package. Instead of one long stretch, people settle into what later scholars call segmented sleep. You close your eyes after sunset, drift for a few hours, then wake again around midnight. That quiet interval, often called the watch, is when prayers are whispered, small chores are done, and sometimes neighbors even slip outside to chat under the moonlight. Historians still argue whether this was healthy, a natural human rhythm tied to firelight and darkness, or just a byproduct of living in drafty houses with too many interruptions. Either way, the idea of 8 uninterrupted hours would sound suspiciously luxurious. The rooster coughs again. Yes, that's a thing. And you almost laugh at the absurdity. The bird doesn't care that it's the middle of the night. He has lungs and an ego, and both demand attention. Somewhere across the yard, a dog shifts on its chain, adding to the midnight chorus. You pull the blanket tighter. Not a blanket in the modern sense, of course. It's rough wool, scratchy against your skin, and heavy enough to feel like you're being gently smothered by an overly affectionate sheep. Comfort wasn't the priority. Warmth was. Imagine this. It's the middle of winter, and the hearth fire has burned low. Your breath mists in the air, but getting up to stir the fire is unthinkable. Instead, you tuck your nose under the wool and wait for first sleep to yield to wakefulness. When it does, you sit up in the gloom, maybe mutter a prayer, maybe check on the animals. And if you're lucky, you share the space with someone willing to talk quietly, trading thoughts or telling dreams before lying back down. Dreams mattered here. To wake in the middle of the night was to hold a thin veil between waking and the beyond. People believed those dreams carried messages, sometimes warnings, sometimes blessings. A quirky tidbit. Some even thought dreams during first sleep were more truthful, while those in second sleep were deceptive, influenced by demons or indigestion. You, half asleep on your straw bed, might decide to interpret a dream of rain as a promise of a good harvest, or maybe a warning that your neighbor's thatch will leak again. But even as you reflect, the world doesn't stay silent. The soundscape of a medieval night is busy in its own way. Rats scurry in the rafters. A neighbor coughs through thin walls. Somewhere down the lane, a drunkard stumbles out of the tavern, singing half a verse before collapsing in a ditch. You think of your blackout curtains and double-glazed windows, and wonder, half amused, half horrified, how anyone here truly slept. The rooster finally stops, perhaps realizing no one cares. Instead, the bells begin. A low, echoing tone rolls through the village. Church bells, ringing out midnight matins, summoning those faithful, or obligated, to rise and shuffle into the cold. Not everyone goes, of course. Some roll over and pretend not to hear. But for monks, it's a summons that cannot be ignored. Their lives revolve around these intervals, the night divided by prayer and duty. You, lying in your straw, are just a witness, but you feel the pull of that rhythm all the same. You close your eyes again, drifting, the warmth of bodies around you, the scratch of straw, the smell of smoke. It all blurs together. Time passes oddly, and soon the second sleep takes you. Morning will come with real finality. The clatter of buckets at the well, the cry of animals needing feed, the rush of life resuming. But for now, this broken, imperfect sleep is your lot. And strangely enough, it works. A small thought flits through your mind as you sink deeper. Maybe, just maybe, there's something more natural in these pauses, in not expecting silence, but instead surrendering to the sounds of the world around you. Modern science debates it still. Whether our ancestors were onto something. Were they healthier for their broken nights, or just surviving the chaos of their time? Historians still argue, and perhaps always will. For now, the fire sighs low, and the bells fade. Your eyelids close again, and the straw mattress, scratchy as it is, feels a little more forgiving. You breathe out slowly, letting the second sleep claim you, and the world softens around the edges. The dawn is reluctant, as though even the sun finds medieval mornings a bit too dreary to arrive on time. You stir in your hay bed, still scratching at the spots where stalks poked you in the night, and for a fleeting moment, you imagine what it must be like to wake not in a drafty hut, but in a royal chamber. Your eyes close again, and the image forms. Tall stone walls lined with tapestries, velvet drapes drawn to keep out the morning chill, and the unmistakable softness of a feather bed under your back. Compared to your own straw-stuffed mattress, it's like trading in a bicycle for a carriage. Royal sleep is not just about luxury. It is theater. You picture a great chamber where a noble or king reclines beneath a heavy canopy, embroidered with symbols of power. The fabric so thick that smoke and drafts are held at bay. Servants scuttle quietly across creaking floors, bringing in warmed wine, straightening pillows, or tending the embers in the hearth. Your hay bed rustles as you imagine yourself in their place, hoping not to trip over your own feet, terrified of making noise while the master slumbers. One mainstream historical fact comes to mind. Feather beds were so prized in the later Middle Ages that wills often listed them as significant inheritances. To own one was to display not only wealth, but refinement. A noble's bed could contain thousands of goose feathers, plucked one painstaking tuft at a time, and sewn into ticking that softened the sleeper's night. You run your hand over your imaginary feather bed, and it sighs beneath your touch, cradling you in a way straw never could. But even in the height of privilege, things weren't perfect. Consider the fringe detail of bed sharing. While peasants crammed together on straw pallets, royalty often shared their beds with favored courtiers, visiting dignitaries, or even political allies. A bed was not just for sleep. It was a stage for alliances, a symbol of intimacy and trust. You picture yourself rolling over to find not a spouse or sibling, but perhaps a duke, snoring gently, his wig slipping sideways. The absurdity is enough to make you smile in the dark. Of course, historians still argue whether all nobles truly enjoyed their so-called luxuries. A feather bed in a cold, damp castle might still leave you shivering, especially with wind whistling through arrow slits. Some chroniclers suggest that thick drapery and layers of blankets were less about comfort and more about sheer survival. Without them, even the richest lord could wake with stiff joints, blaming the chill for what he later described as the pox of old age. You turn in your straw again, half amused, half jealous. Servants in those stone halls didn't just tend fires. They sometimes slept right on the floor near the Lord's bed, ready to fetch water or chase away nightmares with a whispered prayer. The thought of being watched as you slept might unsettle you. Yet in those centuries, it meant safety, status, and vigilance. Imagine the quiet shuffle of a page adjusting your covers while you mumble through a dream, or the faint sound of armor as a guard shifts at the door. Privacy was a luxury reserved not for nobles, but for no one. And yet, the royal chamber does carry its allure. The walls are dressed with hangings that trap warmth, perhaps even painted with saints to ward off evil visions. The canopy overhead is like a tent within the room, cocooning you in color and texture. The feather bed molds to your form, and for the first time in hours, you no longer feel the sharp edges of hay. Your body softens, sinking deeper. You think of the peasants outside, their snores muffled by thatch, their straw rustling with every toss. The contrast is stark, like night and day. Still, sleep carries its own peculiarities regardless of station. Nobles, like peasants, often adhered to segmented sleep. After a few hours, they too woke in the dead of night, perhaps rising to read by candlelight or mutter prayers at a chapel tucked within the castle. Some even held conversations or small councils in those strange hours, believing that night was an honest time when masks slipped away. You imagine yourself stumbling half awake through stone corridors, candle in hand, trailing wax as you attempt to look wise in a council meeting at 3 a.m. The feather bed creaks as you roll again in thought, and the illusion fades back into the scratch of straw. Perhaps wealth didn't solve everything. Perhaps the peasants, crammed together for warmth and laughter, knew a comfort that silken sheets couldn't provide. Historians still debate the true quality of sleep across classes. Was the noble's feather mattress genuinely superior? Or did the solidarity of shared hardship provide a kind of peace money couldn't buy? The fire by your side sputters, and the dream of royalty drifts away. But for a moment, you keep the memory of that feather bed close, imagining the weightless cushion, the hush of servants tiptoeing around, and the embroidered canopy overhead. The rooster outside crows again, reminding you where you truly lie, and you smile at the contrast. The bells will soon ring, and your day will start not in velvet, but in straw. Yet the memory lingers, a soft whisper of how differently one could sleep depending on fortune. You breathe in the smoky air, exhale, and close your eyes, feather and straw mingling in your drifting thoughts as you sink once more towards sleep. The smell reaches you first, even before the crackle of fire or the shuffle of feet in the corridor. A thick, smoky sweetness hovers in the air, clinging to the rafters, then sliding downward to where you lie. You wrinkle your nose, and the realization dawns. It is not incense, nor some comforting loaf in the oven. No, the cook has done it again. The pottage, that eternal pot of barley, beans, and whatever scraps could be thrown in, has burned. You sit up slowly, hay rustling beneath you, and listen as muffled voices rise in the castle kitchens below. Someone curses softly, another groans, and the unmistakable scrape of a ladle against a charred bottom echoes up the stone stair. Medieval pottage was the backbone of daily life. For peasants, it was breakfast, dinner, and sometimes the sad attempt at supper. For nobles, the ingredients might change. More meat, richer spices. But the principle remained. A pot kept over the fire, bubbling endlessly, to which new things were added and old flavors stubbornly clung. A mainstream historical fact makes itself known. Pottage could cook for days, even weeks, with households tossing in carrots, grains, herbs, or bones, letting the mixture evolve endlessly. The result was filling, if not always inspiring. And tonight, as you inhale that smoky tang, it is downright tragic. The cook, poor soul, has drifted off again. You picture him slumped on a bench by the hearth, eyes fluttering closed, as he mumbled about chopping leeks, only to be startled awake by the stench of singed barley clinging to his apron. His hands flap desperately with the ladle, scraping, stirring, hoping no one notices. But in a castle, nothing stays hidden for long. You rise from your straw bed, shoulders hunched against the draft, and tiptoe down the corridor. The stones are cold beneath your feet, and every creak feels amplified in the hush of night. You descend into the kitchen, where the scene unfolds like a play you have watched before. A vast iron cauldron sits over the coals, steam rising in uneven puffs. The cook stirs, his face pale in the firelight, muttering about too little sleep and too much work. Around him, scullions yawn into their sleeves, trying not to laugh at his misfortune. It is a strange comfort, this moment. The reminder that even in halls of power, where feather beds and velvet drapes cushion the lords, the simple truth remains. Someone still burns the stew. A quirky tidbit drifts into your mind. Some kitchens believed that stirring widdershins, counterclockwise, invited misfortune, while clockwise ensured the food would not only cook well, but protect against evil spirits. You smirk at the thought. Perhaps the poor cook turned the wrong way in his drowsy haze, and now the smell of burned beans is not merely his fault, but the fault of cosmic imbalance. The servants whisper, half scandalized, half delighted. Burned pottage means not only ruined supper, but perhaps an angry lord or lady demanding explanations. You imagine the cook's panic, his whispered rehearsals of excuses. The fire too hot, the grain too damp, the scullion's fault for distracting him. Historians still argue whether medieval kitchens had true head chefs, men of authority commanding with ladles like generals with swords, or whether cooks were simply harried servants doing their best. In this dim light, the argument feels irrelevant. The truth is obvious. He is exhausted, and exhaustion leads to charred suppers. You settle yourself quietly on a stool, watching. The fire spits sparks, a faint hiss as fat drips into the coals. The smell grows thicker, not entirely unpleasant. There is something almost nostalgic in the aroma of toasted barley and singed cabbage. It clings to your clothes, reminding you of late-night popcorn left too long in the microwave, centuries before such a thing existed. You smile at the connection, a small bridge across time. The cook sighs, scooping a ladleful to taste. His expression tells the story. Bitterness, smoke, disappointment. He shakes his head and tosses it back into the pot. The scullions, brave enough to sneak a bite, make faces that confirm the verdict. And yet, the pot remains on the fire, because waste is unthinkable. Burned or not, The pottage will be served come dawn, and hungry mouths will swallow it with little complaint. You lean back, letting your eyes wander across the kitchen. Hooks dangle with cuts of meat, though most are thin and bony. Herbs hang drying from beams, their scent competing weakly with the smoke. The floor is littered with rushes, damp and fragrant with spilled broth. Somewhere in the corner, a cat slinks silently, waiting for scraps. The whole space feels alive, noisy even in its quiet, an organism breathing smoke and labor into the night. There is humor here, too, if you allow yourself to see it. The cook muttering about demons in the pot, the scullions giggling behind their sleeves, the idea that tomorrow, when nobles sip their broth, they will nod politely and declare it robust. You chuckle softly, imagining the nobleman's face twisting ever so slightly at the bitter taste, only to recover with forced dignity. After all, to complain openly about a stew would be to admit you are just as bound to the pot as any peasant. The fire pops again, showering sparks. You close your eyes for a moment, feeling the heat on your cheeks, listening to the steady scrape of the ladle against the cauldron's edge. It is rhythmic, almost hypnotic, like the tick of a clock, a reminder that night wears on, and dawn creeps closer with every stir. You wonder briefly if the cook will sleep at all tonight, or if he will spend the hours tasting, adjusting, praying that tomorrow's serving will redeem him. And you? You rise from the stool, stretching, feeling the stiffness in your back. The haybed upstairs still waits, scratchy and honest, but the smell of burned pottage follows you as you climb the stairs. You know it will cling to your hair, your blanket, your dreams. But perhaps that is fitting. For in the medieval night, no one escapes the kitchen entirely. Its smoke seeps through stone. Its flavors linger on tongues. Its errors become shared stories. As you lie down once more, straw creaking beneath you, the rooster stirs faintly outside, not yet ready to crow. You smile, eyes heavy, knowing that somewhere below, the cook is still muttering, still stirring, still fighting with that stubborn cauldron. And in that sound, you find an odd comfort, the reassurance that even in castles, life is messy, smoky, and sometimes just a little burned. The night has deepened, though your eyes remain half open, caught between the fading crackle of the hearth and the odd weight of your dreams. It is in these fragile hours that the world of sleep and the world of meaning bleed into one another, and you realize that to medieval minds, dreams were rarely just dreams. They were messages, omens, or even instructions from forces unseen. You shift slightly on your haybed, straw crackling beneath your shoulder, and let yourself sink into the thought of dream books, those strange manuscripts filled with symbols, interpretations, and endless possibilities for what last night's visions really meant. A mainstream historical fact asserts itself clearly here. In the 12th and 13th centuries, manuscripts of dream interpretation, many based on classical sources like Artemidorus, were copied and translated across Europe, guiding readers in the art of turning visions into prophecy. To dream of water could mean prosperity, while dreaming of fire might signal misfortune. You think of the poor cook downstairs, whose dreams probably smell like scorched barley. What would the dream book say about that? Perhaps that he will face scolding words by dawn, which feels accurate enough. You picture yourself opening one of these dusty volumes by candlelight. The script is cramped, the ink brown and faint. You trace your finger along a passage that declares dreaming of teeth falling out predicts death in the family. Another claims that dreaming of flying means victory in battle. You sigh softly. Neither feels especially helpful when your greatest battle is against itchy straw and squeaky rafters. Still, the human urge to find meaning is comforting, a reminder that long before alarm clocks and morning schedules, people wanted assurance that their private visions mattered. The quirky tidbit you cannot shake is the idea that certain foods before bed were thought to influence dreams. Cheese, in particular, gained a curious reputation. Some believed it caused bizarre or frightening visions. You chuckle at the thought. Peasants nibbling hard cheese late at night, only to wake declaring they'd battled demons or seen omens of rain. Whether or not the cheese truly shaped their dreams, the association stuck, even spilling into jokes centuries later. You shift again, wondering if your own strange visions are the result of supper rather than prophecy. Still, there is weight in these beliefs. You hear faint whispers in the dark, your neighbor stirring, perhaps sharing a midnight tale of what he dreamed. It is a communal act, this telling of dreams. People share them as though passing along gossip or weather reports. In villages, some swore a collective dream could foretell disaster or blessing. A farmer dreaming of rotting crops might spread his fear until an entire community eyed the sky with suspicion. Historians still argue whether these interpretations shaped actual decisions. Did lords postpone campaigns because of ominous dreams? Or are the chroniclers simply dramatizing the past? You let the debate circle in your mind, finding it oddly soothing. Your own thoughts blur, and suddenly you are walking through a field in your half-dream. Stars overhead, shimmering more brightly than you have ever seen them. The grass is wet, cool against your ankles, though you lie still in your straw bed. In your dream, a fox runs ahead of you, darting left and right. You remember faintly from a dream book that animals symbolize instincts, or perhaps hidden enemies. You cannot decide whether to laugh or shiver. The fire pops in reality, tugging you back. You realize this is how it must have felt for countless sleepers before you, shifting endlessly between the weight of real straw and the symbolism of dreams. Imagine a noble, waking in a feather bed, clutching his chest because he dreamed of drowning. At once, he might send for a priest, a physician, or even an astrologer, each offering their own interpretation. Dreams, after all, were not frivolous. They could shape confessions, penance, and even policy. You picture the astrologer now, robes trailing, eyes glinting in the candlelight. He spreads a chart on the table, linking your dream of fire, not to indigestion, but to Mars rising in your chart, a sign of conflict. You resist the urge to roll your eyes, though secretly you admire the confidence. Maybe the truth is simpler. You fell asleep too close to the hearth. And yet, it is easier to believe the universe has a plan than to admit that life is just smoke and chance. The straw rustles again as you turn, trying to find a comfortable hollow. You breathe in the smoky air, let your mind drift back to the fox in the field, and wonder if you will tell someone about it come morning. Perhaps they will nod gravely, insisting it means you must watch your neighbors more carefully. Or perhaps they will laugh and tell you it means you ate too quickly. Both are possible, and neither matters as you sink further into the haze of sleep. What matters is the rhythm, the slow beating of your heart, the rise and fall of your chest, the night stretching endlessly ahead. You close your eyes fully now, allowing both the dream books and the straw to fade into the blur of your thoughts. Somewhere between superstition and science, between cheese and prophecy, you find the simple truth. Sleep is strange, and dreams stranger still. And in that strangeness you drift, carried along by centuries of others who also wondered, whispered, and scribbled their guesses in books you will never see. The fox runs ahead. The stars glow brighter. and the night settles heavy around you. The bells stir you awake once more, but this time, the sound is heavier, rolling through stone corridors, with a command that feels older than sleep itself. You blink into the cold, and the world around you is suddenly different. No longer the smoky village hearth or the hay-stuffed bed of a peasant home, but the silent, ordered world of a monastery. You shiver, pulling your blanket close, as if the chill of cloister walls has settled directly into your bones. The air here is sharper, more austere, carrying with it the faint scent of beeswax and damp stone. The monks are already moving, their sandals slapping quietly against flagstones. You imagine them gliding past, hoods drawn, faces hidden in shadows as they make their way toward the chapel for matins. Midnight prayers, sung when the rest of the world still snores, mark the hours with rhythm and devotion. A mainstream historical fact lies here. The canonical hours structured monastic life so completely that bells rang out 8 times in every 24-hour cycle, and matins, held around midnight, was among the most grueling. It tore the body from rest, insisting that even in darkness, the soul must stay awake. You shuffle after them in your mind, trailing through echoing hallways where torchlight flickers against damp stone. The sound of chanting swells ahead, low and steady, like a tide rising in the chapel. Voices intertwine, some cracking with age, others smooth and youthful, yet all joining in the same Latin psalms. You sit on a cold bench, the wood pressing into your spine, and listen. The chant is not meant to entertain, not meant to dazzle. It is steady, hypnotic, a rope tugging each monk from sleep back into duty. And yet, as you close your eyes, the rhythm feels almost lulling. The steady syllables become waves against your mind, and you think of how many monks must have nodded off mid-verse, heads bobbing before jerking awake. Historians still argue whether these midnight prayers truly deepened devotion, or if they simply exhausted bodies already weary from labor. Some chroniclers describe monks staggering through the fields the next day, nodding with fatigue as they swung sickles or copied manuscripts. You breathe slowly, feeling the weight of their exhaustion echoing through centuries. A quirky tidbit drifts through. Some monasteries reportedly allowed dozing monks to lean on special sleep benches during long vigils, so that the body could rest while the soul supposedly remained alert. You picture a row of monks, heads tipped like sunflowers in the dark, the chant continuing even as dreams slipped in at the edges. Perhaps the abbot pretended not to notice, or perhaps he did, and simply sighed, knowing no one can truly conquer sleep forever. The chill grows heavier in the chapel. Candles sputter, dripping wax onto iron holders, their small flames struggling against the vastness of stone. You rub your arms, but the cold remains, settling deeper. You think of your own warm bed, modern and forgiving, and then remember that for these monks, warmth is often considered weakness. Their blankets are coarse, their mattresses thin, their chambers sparse. Comfort is not the goal, discipline is. Yet there is also a strange serenity here. The chant weaves on, pulling you into a rhythm older than memory. You notice how time feels different inside these walls. Hours are not marked by sunrise or sunset, but by bells, by prayer, by habit. Sleep becomes just another fragment in a schedule designed for eternity. You feel the monotony pressing in, yet at the same time, you find it oddly calming. To surrender choice, to let bells dictate your hours, is to slip into a current where you no longer need to think. One monk coughs softly, breaking the rhythm. Another adjusts his hood, the sound of fabric brushing against stone. The chant continues undisturbed, flowing around these small human noises like water around rocks. You let the sound wash over you, eyes half closed, and wonder how many centuries have heard the same psalms echo through stone halls. Generations rising in the dark, chanting to the same rhythms, then sinking back into hard beds for their second sleep. The thought makes you smile faintly. Even in this severe setting, life has its absurdities. Perhaps a monk dreams of roasted goose, only to be dragged awake for prayers. Perhaps another slips his sandal in the dark, tripping over a bench as the chant carries on. These little stumbles, these small yawns, are reminders that no matter how holy the purpose, the body never fully surrenders its demands. You feel that demand yourself, heavy in your eyes, tugging you down. The service lingers. Psalms roll into hymns, prayers into silence, silence into bells once more. The monks bow, shuffle, and disperse, returning to their cells like shadows fading into the night. You follow in your mind, padding back across the cold flagstones, the torchlight dimming behind you. Your straw bed, thin, lumpy but familiar, waits. You collapse onto it, your body sighing with relief, and the cold slowly ebbs into warmth. As you lie there, drifting toward second sleep, you realize how tightly bound the medieval world was to these cycles. Even those outside the monastery could hear the bells drifting across fields and villages, reminding them of prayers they might never attend. Time itself was stitched together by sound. You curled deeper into the straw, thinking of those bells, their clang a rhythm that shaped not just monks, but entire communities. The night quiets again, the chant fading into memory. The fire smolders faintly, the rooster stirs in his sleep, and you sink further, carried on the thought of monks whispering psalms into the dark. Perhaps their voices still echo, faint but endless, somewhere in the walls of old stone cloisters. You breathe deeply, the rhythm of their chant still vibrating in your chest, and let sleep come again. Soft as beeswax and cold as stone. The road stretches before you, long and uneven, cobblestones slipping into ruts carved by wagon wheels, mud puddles swallowing the moonlight. You step carefully, the hem of your tunic brushing against your boots, until the glow of lanterns appears ahead. A tavern, squat and welcoming, its timbered walls leaning just slightly, as though the building itself is already half asleep. Smoke drifts from the chimney, carrying the scent of roasted onions and stale ale. You push the door open, and at once the sound hits you. Laughter, snores, the clatter of mugs on wooden tables. You have arrived at the medieval inn, where rest promises relief but never privacy. The room is dim, lit by a handful of candles dripping wax onto pewter plates. A dog growls faintly from the corner before sinking back into dreams. Travelers crowd the benches, cloaks draped loosely, faces flushed from ale. You spot a few merchants, their purses tied close, and 2 pilgrims, their shells gleaming faintly in the firelight. Everyone looks tired, though none so tired that they forget to eye the newcomers with suspicion. You feel the straw beneath your feet as you cross the room, crunching faintly, because yes, this is not only floor covering, but also bedding for those who will soon collapse in corners. A mainstream historical fact is clear. Taverns and inns rarely offered private rooms. Instead, travelers slept together in large halls, sometimes dozens to a room, lying shoulder to shoulder on straw pallets. You imagine the noise, the smells, the constant shifting of bodies. Comfort was scarce, but safety in numbers was better than the dangers of sleeping alone on the road. Your modern sense of personal space crumbles quickly in such company. The innkeeper greets you with a nod, his eyes already heavy with the weariness of late night. He waves you toward the common room, where a few straw pallets have been laid out. You take your place between a merchant snoring thunderously and a pilgrim mumbling prayers, even as his head droops forward. You sigh, lying back, the straw scratching at your neck, the air thick with smoke, and the sour tang of ale-soaked breath. This, apparently, is rest. And yet, there is a strange coziness in it. The fire burns steadily at the far end of the hall, casting a golden glow across faces softened by fatigue. The chorus of snores blends into something almost rhythmic, a lullaby of exhaustion. You pull your cloak tighter around you, trying to shield yourself from drafts seeping through the timber walls. A quirky tidbit drifts into your mind. Some inns rented out not only space on straw pallets, but also bugs. Fleas and lice were so common that they were considered part of the package, joked about even in medieval songs. You scratch absent-mindedly, half amused, half horrified, imagining the insect population marching triumphantly across your cloak. Still, you close your eyes, because the body has no choice. The road has been long, and the inn, noisy as it is, offers a certain safety. You listen to the voices fading around you. A pair of men argue softly in the corner about the price of wool. Another tells a tale of saints and miracles, his words slurring into half-sleep. Someone laughs too loudly, then hiccups, then promptly begins to snore. The soundscape becomes a patchwork of human need, of lives pressed together in straw and smoke. Historians still argue whether these inns were truly safe havens or thinly disguised traps. Some chronicles describe robberies, fights, even murders taking place in common rooms, with travelers waking to find their purses gone. Others, though, emphasize the camaraderie. Stories exchanged, songs sung, prayers shared before sleep. You weigh the arguments in your mind, lying between your loudly snoring companions. Perhaps both are true, and every night brought its own balance of trust and danger. The fire pops, and for a moment the sparks remind you of stars. You turn onto your side, straw crunching, and breathe slowly. The merchant beside you mutters something about coin, clutching his pouch even in dreams. The pilgrim shifts, whispering fragments of Latin prayers. You find yourself caught between their worlds, wealth and piety, both bound together by the same straw bedding and the same smoky air. The tavern creaks as wind rattles the shutters. Somewhere upstairs, a mule stamps its hoof, perhaps restless in the stable. The innkeeper shuffles through, tossing another log onto the fire before retreating again. You smile faintly, imagining how many nights he has witnessed this chorus of humanity. How many faces pressed into straw. How many snores mingling into one endless song of travel. And yet, humor remains here too. You picture the traveler who, unable to bear the snores, shoves straw into his ears like makeshift plugs. Or the one who rolls in his sleep, accidentally thumping into his neighbor, sparking an argument before both drift back into slumber. The absurdity of communal sleeping is timeless. You realize people centuries ago likely shared the same mix of frustration and resignation you feel now. The night wears on. The fire burns lower, the snoring steadier. You find your breathing syncing with the sounds around you, your body surrendering to the rhythm of the room. The straw no longer scratches so fiercely. The smells fade into the background. The warmth of bodies close by creates its own shield against the draft. You wonder briefly about the road tomorrow, the miles ahead, the weather uncertain, the dangers waiting beyond village walls. But for tonight, those thoughts can rest. Here, in this noisy, crowded inn, you are safe enough to let sleep take you. The snores become waves. The firelight becomes a soft blur, and your eyelids close gently. Straw rustles once more as you shift, finding a hollow that fits your shape. The pilgrim beside you sighs into his prayers. The merchant snores louder, then quieter, then louder again. You breathe in, breathe out, and let the sound carry you into dreams. The tavern fades behind you, replaced once again by the quieter stillness of the night. But the silence is fragile, never absolute. A flicker of light pulls your gaze toward a cottage window, where a candle sputters against the dark. You pause, watching as the flame wavers, bending under its own smoke, nearly extinguished, then flaring back into stubborn life. It looks delicate, a single point of warmth in the endless chill, and yet you know how dangerous it is. Fire, after all, is both comfort and constant threat in this world. You imagine yourself inside that cottage now, lying back on your straw mattress, the candle stub set on a wooden stool beside you. Its light trembles across the thatched roof, catching every crack in the plaster. The smell of melted wax fills the air, sweet and faintly acrid, clinging to the wool blanket draped over your shoulders. The flame flickers, smaller, smaller, then suddenly surges, as though to remind you who is in charge. You know better than to ignore it. For while candles are necessary, they are also treacherous companions of the night. A mainstream historical fact anchors this moment. House fires were among the most common disasters in medieval villages, and many began because of unattended candles or hearths left smoldering. Wooden beams, thatch roofs, and straw bedding turned small sparks into roaring infernos within minutes. Entire rows of houses could vanish before dawn. You shift uneasily on your imaginary bed, picturing how easily one careless flame could consume everything around you. The quirky tidbit that lingers is how some households tried to train their candles. It sounds absurd, but people swore that trimming wicks at certain angles or reciting small charms while lighting them could prevent accidents. One tale even suggests that placing a bowl of water beneath the candle not only caught wax, but discouraged wandering spirits. You glance at the candle beside you, tilting as wax drips heavily, and you cannot help but smile at the thought, half skepticism, half respect for the creativity of fear. The night grows colder, and you imagine pulling the blanket tighter as your eyes grow heavy. The candle's glow softens the room, shadows stretching across the walls like lazy dancers. Your eyelids droop, but each time they close, a spark of anxiety jolts you awake. What if the candle tips? What if wax drips onto the rushes covering the floor? What if you sleep too deeply to notice? It is a game of balance, desire for light against fear of fire. You turn slightly, watching the flame, and in that moment you hear it, the shuffle of the night watchman outside. His boots scrape against the cobbles, his staff tapping rhythmically. He calls out the hour in a weary voice, reminding everyone that he is awake while they rest. Historians still argue whether these watchmen were truly effective guardians or just half-asleep men wandering with lanterns. Some records suggest they prevented thefts and fires. Others describe them as comic figures, dozing in doorways while disasters unfolded behind them. You smile faintly, imagining a watchman leaning against a wall, muttering to himself about how much he hates the cold. The candle wavers again, drawing your focus back. It is smaller now, a stub clinging to its wick, but its light still feels like a shield against the dark. You think of how precious candles once were: beeswax for the wealthy, tallow for the poor. The former smelled sweet, burning steadily, while the latter stank of animal fat, sputtering and spitting as it melted. You wrinkle your nose at the imagined scent of tallow smoke, thick and greasy, filling the room like an unwelcome guest. And yet, people relied on them. Without candlelight, evenings would shrink into nothingness, swallowed by the dark. Families sat close, squinting over work or prayer. Children stared into flames, their imaginations sparked by dancing shadows. A single candle could stretch a day's usefulness, keep the cold at bay, and convince you that the world was less lonely. But one mistake, one nodding head, one clumsy hand, and that same flame could erase everything. You sigh, pulling the blanket closer, the straw rustling beneath you. Outside, the wind shifts, rattling the shutters, and the candle flame leans dangerously. You reach out, steadying the stool, and feel your heart thump harder than it should for such a small act. The flame steadies again, its glow warming your hand, reminding you of both your fragility and your control. A soft laugh escapes you, thinking of all the times people must have scolded each other over candles. "Don't set it there! Trim the wick shorter! Blow it out before bed!" Advice passed down, repeated endlessly, sometimes ignored with disastrous results. You imagine a husband and wife bickering over the candle's place, the wife insisting it belongs on a plate of sand, the husband waving her off with a grunt. Hours later, the roof catches, and the neighbors are roused to shouts and smoke. Tragedy born from stubbornness, an old story, still painfully familiar. You lie back, watching the candle sink lower, the wick curling into a black knot. Its light softens now, more gentle, more forgiving, painting the room with a honey glow. Your breathing slows to match its rhythm. The fear ebbs into acceptance. Fire is both danger and necessity, both destroyer and comforter. And here you are, caught in its glow, centuries later. The watchman's voice drifts faintly through the shutter cracks, calling the hour once again. You smile, eyes heavy, the candle's flame blurring into a golden haze. The night feels longer, but safer somehow, as if the presence of that small flame and that weary watchman are enough to keep the dark at bay. You let your eyelids close, straw cradling you, candle whispering faintly against the still air. And so you drift, wrapped in warmth and unease, a fragile balance that defines every medieval night. The candle gutters once, twice, then steadies, its flame holding firm as you surrender to sleep. Your sleep this time is shallow, pulled in too many directions by flickering shadows and the weight of too much barley stew. You drift, not entirely in the straw, not entirely in dreams, and as your mind wanders, you begin to overhear voices. Soft, measured, almost amused. Philosophers, debating in the air above your head, their words flowing like smoke from the candle stub that has just gone dark. You roll onto your back, squinting upward, though of course you see nothing but rafters and dust. Still, the voices come clearer. The chatter of men who centuries earlier tried to decide once and for all whether your restless dreams are gifts from heaven or simply your belly complaining after supper. The first voice, grand and deliberate, belongs to Aristotle. You imagine him seated with calm authority, a scroll in his hand, his brow furrowed just enough to appear thoughtful, but not distressed. He insists that dreams are natural phenomena, products of the body, reflections of heat and motion, within the sleeper. The brain, he argues, replays impressions from waking hours, sometimes garbled, sometimes vivid, but always tethered to earthly causes. You smile faintly. Aristotle, practical as always, explaining your dream of chasing a fox as nothing more than your memory chewing over the day's noises. Then another voice rises, one with a different cadence, more speculative, more daring. Perhaps it is Cicero, perhaps a medieval scholar borrowing his tone. He suggests that dreams may be messages from the divine, whispers of truth reaching you through the veil of sleep. How else to explain visions that seem to predict storms, deaths, or victories? You picture a general who wakes from a dream of blood and changes his battle plans accordingly. Was it coincidence or fate speaking in riddles? The straw shifts beneath you, as though to emphasize your uncertainty. Historians still argue whether people of the Middle Ages truly believed all dreams had meaning, or whether they treated most as nonsense and only remembered the ones that proved useful. After all, it is easy to dismiss a vision of flying pigs, unless by some strange twist, pigs actually escape their pen the next morning. You chuckle softly, wondering how many peasants woke muttering about meaningless dreams, only to change their tune when events aligned too closely. A quirky tidbit enters the conversation. One medieval physician swore that dreams were determined by the vapors rising from your stomach. Eat too much pork before bed, and you would dream of quarrels, indulge in wine, and expect visions of laughter or scandal. Even lettuce had its role, said to inspire calm, drowsy dreams if eaten at supper. You turn in your straw, amused, imagining entire diets designed not for health, but for dream management. Perhaps you would avoid cheese, remembering its notorious reputation for disturbing visions, and instead nibble lettuce leaves to guarantee a peaceful night. The voices continue, echoing in your half-sleep. One insists on divine providence, another on bodily humors, another on pure chance. They circle each other endlessly, like moths chasing the same flame. And you, the dreamer, are left to wonder whether your vision of monks chanting under starlight was a gift from God, a side effect of smoke inhalation, or simply your brain recycling images you already knew. The mystery lingers, strangely soothing in its lack of resolution. You shift again, straw creaking loudly. The merchant beside you in the inn, though in your mind he has become a philosopher too, snores with authority, as though punctuating the arguments overhead. The pilgrim mutters his prayers, occasionally rolling onto his side. The chorus of ordinary bodies grounds you, reminding you that most people probably didn't care about dream theories, as long as they managed to sleep. And yet, in monasteries and universities, the debate pressed on. Every vision a possible key to understanding the cosmos. The candle is gone now, only smoke curling faintly in the darkness. You stare upward, eyes unfocused, listening as the philosophers fade into your own thoughts. Imagine Aristotle rolling his eyes at Cicero, Cicero scoffing at Aristotle, and both scowling when some medieval friar insists that his dream of St. Peter was proof of his coming sainthood. You laugh softly into the straw, a sound so small it is swallowed immediately by snores. And then you wonder, do you actually want an answer? Would it comfort you to know for certain that dreams are only stomach vapors, or would that strip them of their charm? Perhaps it is better that they remain mysteries, open doors in the night, where reason and wonder blur. You let that thought settle, heavy but pleasant, and your body softens against the straw. The fire in the corner sighs, the last log collapsing into glowing ash. The night grows colder, the drafts more insistent. You pull your cloak tighter, And as you do, the voices fade entirely. No more debates, no more theories, only the sound of your own breathing, steady and slow. Sleep comes again, softer this time, carrying with it fragments of both philosophy and folly. And if you dream tonight, whether of foxes, fire, or flying through the rafters, you know that someone, somewhere, has written down exactly what it must mean. You smile faintly, drifting deeper, content to let the debate continue without you. You wake in darkness once more, but this time, it isn't the cold or the snores that jolt you. It's the pressing, undeniable urge of nature. You sigh, pulling the blanket tighter for a moment, bargaining with yourself, before you finally give in and swing your legs out of the straw. The floor beneath your feet is icy, rough-hewn planks that creak with every hesitant step. You wince at each groan, hoping not to wake the bodies snoring around you. Somewhere nearby, a dog shifts and sighs. The world is quiet, save for your awkward shuffle toward the object no medieval household could do without. The chamber pot. It sits humbly in the corner, unglamorous and entirely necessary. A squat ceramic pot, perhaps chipped at the rim. Or, if you are very poor, simply a wooden bucket lined with straw. Its presence is constant, lurking under beds or tucked discreetly behind stools, waiting for moments like this. A mainstream historical fact reminds you that chamber pots were essential in nearly every home before modern plumbing, used not just at night, but often during the day, when a trip outside was inconvenient or unsafe. You crouch over it with sleepy resignation, grateful at least that you don't need to stumble into the frozen yard. Still, the process is never elegant. You balance awkwardly, trying not to make too much noise, praying the pot doesn't shift or scrape against the floor. You imagine the embarrassment of waking an entire household with the unmistakable sound of relief. Privacy is a luxury your world does not yet recognize, and bodily functions are simply another part of communal life. Children, servants, guests, all must face the reality of the pot. You think briefly of how modern plumbing allows you dignity and silence, and you cannot help but smile wryly at the comparison. A quirky tidbit adds some humor to the scene. Chamber pots were not always confined to bedrooms. In fact, wealthy nobles sometimes brought elaborately decorated pots with them on journeys, carried by servants in leather cases. Some were painted with amusing designs, even faces inside the bowl, so that one literally relieved themselves on a rival's likeness. You stifle a laugh at the thought of a baron smugly using such a pot, only for his servant to lug it away later. The absurdity lingers, making the moment in your drafty cottage feel lighter. When finished, you set the pot aside, careful not to tip it, and shuffle back across the creaking boards. Your cloak drags slightly, catching in a splinter. You mutter under your breath and glance nervously around, though everyone else still snores on, oblivious. The journey back to your straw bed feels longer than the trip away from it. Each creak of wood echoes like a thunderclap, and you find yourself imagining how many countless feet have made this same midnight march in centuries past. Historians still argue whether chamber pots were emptied first thing in the morning or at more leisurely times. Some accounts suggest servants carried them out before dawn, dumping their contents into cesspits or the street. Others claim pots might linger, filling gradually until someone was forced to deal with them. You wrinkle your nose at the thought of lingering pots, the stench clinging to the morning air. Either way, it is a job no one envies. You settle back onto the straw, pulling the blanket over your shoulders, your body sighing with relief at the warmth. Yet the creaks and groans of the floor remain in your ears. You picture noble halls, where the same routine unfolds, though there the chamber pots might be silver or brass, lined with cloth, placed discreetly in carved cabinets. Servants wait just outside the chamber doors, ready to whisk them away. Even kings are not spared from the midnight call of nature. The difference is only in who does the carrying afterward. The cottage settles once again, the drafts whispering through cracks in the walls, the fire in the hearth smoldering low. You close your eyes, but the thought of all those chamber pots, humble, decorated, silver, wooden, flickers in your imagination. The medieval night is never glamorous, and perhaps that is what makes it oddly endearing. No matter how high or low, all must shuffle across creaking floors. All must bend over the same small vessels. All must sigh with relief before climbing back into straw or feathers. The humor of it comforts you, the reminder that humanity shares the same rhythms across centuries. You chuckle softly into your blanket, the sound muffled by wool. Somewhere outside, the rooster shifts in his perch, though he spares you his crow this time. The cottage breathes with you, its silence broken only by snores and the faint drip of wax from a forgotten candle stub. And so you drift once more, into sleep that feels a little lighter now. The chamber pot waits silently in its corner, the planks creak less loudly, and your straw bed, scratchy though it is, cradles you into dreams. Perhaps in those dreams you will walk again through noble halls, or perhaps you will simply float above the village, amused by the countless pots hidden in every chamber below. Either way, you sleep, content that even the most ordinary moments tie you to a world both strange and familiar. The night stretches onward, heavy with silence, but you are not entirely at ease. The draft has returned, curling in under the door and teasing at your toes through the thin blanket. You shift, restless, and your mind drifts toward remedies. Those ancient tricks and whispered charms people once trusted to bring sleep or chase away the nightmares that hovered at the edges of the dark. You picture yourself in a medieval chamber, candles guttering low, a wooden chest creaking open as someone rummages for herbs and little pouches meant to soothe the weary mind. Herbal remedies were the first defense against sleeplessness. A mainstream historical fact tells you that medieval households often brewed drinks from poppy seeds, lettuce, or even chamomile to calm the body before bed. Honey was added too, not only to sweeten the bitterness, but also because it was thought to hold mystical properties of harmony and health. You sip the imagined brew, its warmth trickling through you, the bitter tang softened by sweetness. Your eyelids feel heavier, though the bitterness lingers on your tongue. But drinks were only the beginning. The quirky tidbit that comes to you now is the charm hidden beneath pillows. Tiny pouches stuffed with herbs like lavender or fennel, sometimes stitched with symbols meant to confuse or repel spirits of the night. One tale even insists that hanging sprigs of rue above the bed would prevent nightmares, though the strong smell must have been enough to keep anyone awake instead. You smile faintly, picturing peasants tucking fragrant bundles under their straw pillows, hoping the scent would guide them toward peaceful dreams. You pull your blanket tighter, almost feeling the phantom weight of such a pouch tucked under your head. The air grows dense with imagined fragrances, sharp rue, sweet lavender, the earthy musk of dried poppy. They mingle with the faint smoke still clinging to your clothes, creating a perfume both soothing and strange. You breathe deeply, allowing yourself to believe, just for a moment, that these scents can indeed hold back the chaos of dreams. Still, the fear of nightmares lingers. Shadows on the wall lengthen, their shapes bending oddly, and your mind conjures old fears. Nightmares, in the medieval imagination, were not merely bad dreams, but attacks, incursions by demons, or by a shadowy figure called the night hag, who pressed down on the sleeper's chest. Historians still argue whether these stories were rooted in genuine spiritual fears, or in the very real sensation of sleep paralysis. Either way, the terror was real enough that charms and prayers became nightly armor. You murmur a prayer under your breath, imagining the voice of a medieval sleeper whispering the same words centuries ago. The sound is soft, rhythmic, and soon you find it merging with the pulse of your heartbeat. There is comfort in ritual, even if part of you knows the real cause of a nightmare is simply your body shifting in straw too long. You remember another remedy described in an old text. Warm milk mixed with ground nutmeg, believed to bring not only rest, but prophetic dreams. You picture a monk carefully measuring spices, convinced that the right blend might reveal a vision of truth. You smile again, imagining yourself sitting cross-legged in the dark, sipping spiced milk like a patient student of the future. Would your dreams reveal wisdom, or would they only return the fox you chased last night? The fire in the hearth crackles faintly, reminding you that warmth itself is a remedy. Cold, drafty rooms made rest difficult, so people layered heavy blankets or huddled close together. You shift closer to the imagined warmth, the blanket scratching your chin. Even the discomfort has its charm. Shared breath, shared blankets, shared remedies. Sleep was never a solitary ritual. The humor of it slips into your thoughts as well. Imagine a weary father telling his child that placing a spoon under the pillow would stop nightmares. Or a grandmother insisting that sleeping with your feet pointing east guaranteed good rest. Perhaps these were tricks to quiet anxious minds, much like modern advice to count sheep. And sheep, you realize with a grin, were literally counted in some places as they bleated outside the window. You chuckle softly into your blanket, the sound swallowed quickly by the still night. But the remedies are not all harmless. Some concoctions carried real risks. Stronger brews from poppy or mandrake could sedate deeply, even dangerously. Physicians, when consulted, might prescribe such drafts with solemn authority, balancing the promise of rest against the threat of overdose. You imagine lying in the dark, heart slowing, body heavy, hovering between comfort and peril. Perhaps some sleepers welcomed the risk, desperate for peace after endless nights of fear and interruption. You sigh, pulling the blanket higher. The straw rustles beneath you, sharp edges digging into your side. And suddenly, you understand why so many turned to herbs and charms. Anything to soften the reality of scratchy beds, noisy neighbors, and cold drafts. Sleep was not guaranteed. It was earned, fought for with every small tool at hand. You close your eyes, feeling the phantom scent of lavender again, the warmth of honeyed milk, the hush of whispered prayers. Gradually, your mind loosens. The herbs, the charms, the prayers, they blur together, not as separate remedies, but as one collective lullaby. A culture's attempt to soothe itself, to tame the night, to find peace in a world where fire and fever could strike at any moment. You let that thought settle, heavy and calm, and your breathing deepens. The chamber pot waits silently in its corner. The fire sinks lower, and the night holds steady. Perhaps you will dream of herbs tonight, sprigs of lavender swaying in the wind, or perhaps you will dream of nothing at all. Either way, you know that across centuries, others whispered the same prayers, sipped the same honeyed drinks, and laid their hopes beneath their pillows. And in that shared act, you find comfort enough to let go. The walls of the cottage fade, and in their place stretches an open field. The roof of thatch dissolves into the greater roof of sky, so wide and so clear that you forget for a moment how heavy the night felt indoors. You blink upward, your back now pressed against the earth itself, your bed nothing more than a rough blanket spread over grass. You are no longer in the cloister, nor in the tavern, nor even beside the stubbornly burning pottage. Tonight you are a traveler, bedding down beneath the stars, with nothing but your cloak to shield you from the chill. The ground is hard, uneven, and carries the faint smell of damp soil. Your shoulder finds a stone, your hip meets a root. But after miles on the road, the discomfort barely registers. Sleep outside is not luxury, it is necessity. Pilgrims, merchants, wandering craftsmen, all must rest where they can, often far from the safety of village walls. A mainstream historical fact emerges here. Travel in the Middle Ages was slow and exhausting, with roads poorly maintained, inns scattered thinly, and distances far greater than weary legs could cover in a single day. To sleep beneath the stars was not adventure, but routine survival. You pull your cloak tighter, listening to the sounds around you. A horse shifts nearby, its tack jingling softly as it snorts into the grass. Other travelers murmur in low voices, their words drifting like smoke, fading as exhaustion overtakes them. The fire at the center of your camp has burned low, little more than glowing embers, their warmth barely reaching you. Above, the stars gleam fiercely, sharper than you ever see them through modern haze. They fill the sky, a map of lights stretching in every direction, both compass and calendar, to those who must sleep beneath them. A quirky tidbit rises from memory. Many believed the stars themselves influenced not only fate, but dreams. Some pilgrims swore that sleeping under certain constellations would grant prophetic visions, while others insisted that dreams beneath a waning moon were to be distrusted. You glance upward at the Pleiades, clustered tightly, and wonder if your dreams tonight will be gentle or filled with riddles. The thought is oddly soothing, a reminder that even in discomfort, the heavens offered guidance. But the discomfort remains. The earth presses insistently, the wind slips under your cloak, and every rustle in the grass stirs unease. You hear an owl call from a nearby tree, its low hoot breaking the silence. In the distance, a wolf howls faintly, and you feel the group around the fire stiffen. Night on the road is not free of danger. Animals, thieves, even spirits were feared. Historians still argue whether the threats of spirits and demons were sincerely believed or served more as stories to keep travelers cautious. Either way, the fear was real, and you can feel it in the way you clutch your blanket tighter. You shift onto your side, eyes still locked on the stars. The constellations shimmer with stories. Orion with his belt, Draco coiled eternally, the Great Bear lumbering across the sky. To medieval travelers, these were more than shapes. They were signals. They told the time of year, the length of night, even the likely weather. You smile faintly, imagining a pilgrim nudging his companion awake to point out a star, muttering that tomorrow will bring rain because the heavens have whispered it so. Perhaps he is right, perhaps not, but the faith in the sky is unshakable. Sleep comes slowly out here. The earth resists your body. The noises of the night demand attention. Someone nearby snores softly. Another coughs into his blanket. You breathe in the mingled smells of smoke, leather, and sweat. It is not pleasant, but it is human, grounding, and oddly comforting. You think of your own bed at home, soft and private, and the contrast makes you chuckle softly in the dark. Here, privacy is non-existent. Even your dreams may be overheard, muttered aloud, as you toss and turn. The humor of it lingers. Imagine waking to find a fellow traveler shaking you, demanding to know why you called his name in your sleep. Or a merchant boasting that his dream promised profit, while his companion insists the stars told him to beware. The absurdity of strangers bickering over dreams while lying shoulder to shoulder on the same hard ground makes you smile, even as your eyes grow heavy. The embers pop softly, sending up a final curl of smoke. The cold presses harder, urging you deeper into your cloak. You pull your knees to your chest, curling into the smallest shape you can manage. Your body aches, but the stars remain steady. Silent guardians overhead. You trace one last constellation, following its path across the heavens, and let your breathing fall into rhythm with the night. Historians still debate whether outdoor sleep was seen as hardship or simply accepted as part of life. For peasants and pilgrims, there was little choice. The road dictated its own rules. For merchants, perhaps it was an annoyance, endured only for the promise of coin. For you, lying now on this damp earth, it is a reminder of how resilient bodies can be, how even in discomfort, rest eventually finds you. You close your eyes, hearing once more the owl's call, the faint rustle of animals grazing, the murmur of a prayer whispered nearby. The stars remain etched behind your eyelids, glowing faintly even as sleep claims you. You dream, perhaps, of walking among them, tracing the constellations with your hands, or perhaps of nothing at all. Either way, the night is long, the ground unyielding, and your body surrendering despite itself. And so you rest beneath the open sky, a traveler among travelers, cradled not by straw or feathers, but by the earth itself, watched over by the patient, silent stars. The stars above blur as dawn threatens, but before the sun rises, another kind of wakefulness holds sway in the castles of kings. You turn in your straw, shifting restlessly, and imagine yourself not in a pilgrim's field, but in a drafty hall where torches burn late into the night. The air is thick with smoke, laughter, and the odd rattle of dice on a wooden table. Sleep has not yet come, for here, where lords and their courts gather, the night is not a time of rest, but of demands. The king sits tall in his chair, his eyes heavy yet unwilling to surrender, and at his side waits the figure who will not sleep until he does. The jester. Royalty did not keep ordinary hours. A mainstream historical fact makes this clear. Many courts extended their evenings far into the night, with feasts, entertainments, and discussions continuing long past midnight. Nobles might drift away in ones and twos, but the king could summon his companions whenever whim struck. You picture it vividly. Servants yawning discreetly behind hands, musicians strumming quietly in the corner, while the jester capers with forced cheer, bells on his cap jingling in the heavy silence. The straw beneath you scratches as you imagine being in his shoes, or rather, his curled slippers. The jester's job is never done. He must amuse the Lord, even when his own eyes ache with fatigue, even when he longs for the same straw pallet the scullions claim. He dances, tells riddles, sings songs, just bawdy enough to raise laughter, but not so bold as to offend. You smile faintly, knowing how delicate that balance must have been. To bore the king was dangerous. To anger him, deadly. The quirky tidbit that surfaces here is one you cannot quite shake. Jesters sometimes pretended to fall asleep mid-performance, collapsing onto the floor in exaggerated snores to make the court laugh. Irony layered on irony, their fake slumber a mocking echo of the genuine exhaustion that weighed on every servant in the room. You picture a jester snoring loudly while the king chuckles, even as the servants behind him wish they could truly collapse. The humor masks the truth. Everyone here is tired, but no one dares admit it. The torches hiss as they burn low, shadows jerking across the walls. You can almost hear the shuffle of servants carrying in yet another tray of wine, their steps clumsy with weariness. They must stay alert, ready to refill cups, to bow at commands, to clear the remains of dishes no one wanted. Historians still argue whether such late-night entertainments were a symbol of power, the ability to dictate the hours of others, or merely the natural result of rulers who found daylight too burdened with politics. Either way, the result is the same. Sleepless lords, restless courts, weary servants, and jesters forced to dance until their knees ache. You roll onto your side, straw rustling, and picture yourself at the edge of this court. Perhaps you are a servant, yawning discreetly as you fetch a jug of ale. Perhaps you are the musician plucking the same strings for the 100th time, your fingers stiff with fatigue. Perhaps you are the jester himself, bells jangling as you force another smile. Whoever you are, the night stretches endlessly. Sleep is distant, a luxury reserved for later, when the king finally waves his hand and declares himself satisfied. Still, humor clings stubbornly even to this setting. You imagine the king nodding off in his own chair, eyes drooping as the jester babbles on. The entire court waits, holding their breath, until the royal head dips too far forward. At last, a servant gently clears his throat, and the king startles awake, pretending he had only been resting his eyes. The jesters seize on this, turning it into a joke for the next night, and the cycle begins anew. You stretch slightly, letting the straw settle beneath you. The court fades, but the sense remains. This endless tug between power and fatigue, between duty and rest. Even kings are not spared the weight of sleep. They may resist longer than most, but eventually, eyelids grow heavy, heads nod, and even crowns cannot keep dreams at bay. The fire in your imagination flickers low. You hear the jester's bells one last time, see the torches sputter, and watch the servants shuffle wearily to their pallets. The king finally stands, stretching with the same awkward stiffness you feel now. He waves his hand, and the hall empties, a tide of bodies rushing toward rest. You smile faintly at the thought. Even in castles, sleep eventually claims its due. The rooster stirs faintly outside, signaling that dawn is closer than you thought. You curl deeper into your blanket, straw scratching at your cheek, and let the image of the court dissolve. The laughter fades, the bells go silent, and the night folds back into quiet. You breathe slowly, the weight of centuries pressing into your chest, and drift once more into dreams. The laughter of courts fades into silence, but the silence does not last. The air around you grows heavier, less playful, carrying a tension that clings like smoke. You shift on your straw bed and realize this night is not like the others. It is thick with unease, the kind that wakes entire households at once. A cough rattles in the dark. Another follows. Soon the sound spreads, soft but insistent, as if the air itself has turned against the sleepers who breathe it. You pull your blanket tighter, though it cannot shield you from the dread creeping through the room. Illness in the night was no stranger to medieval life. A mainstream historical fact presses forward. Outbreaks of plague, fever, and other sicknesses often swept through towns with terrifying speed, turning shared sleeping spaces into risks rather than comforts. Families huddled close together for warmth, but closeness also meant contagion. One child's cough became a mother's fever, then a father's shiver, until the whole room lay restless, sweating or trembling on the same prickly beds of straw. The straw beneath you suddenly feels different, less like bedding, more like tinder for fevered dreams. You imagine yourself turning over, your skin clammy, your body aching, while the fire in the hearth throws uneven shadows across faces drawn with worry. Someone mutters a prayer, another calls for water, and footsteps creak as a parent fetches a damp cloth from a basin. The night is no longer a time of rest. It has become a vigil. A quirky tidbit surfaces, odd but strangely fitting. Some believed illness in the night was caused by miasma, poisonous air seeping in through windows or rising from marshes. To combat it, people hung herbs like rosemary and sage above their beds, or carried posies of flowers close to their noses, hoping the sweet smells would drive away the corruption. You picture a feverish sleeper clutching a bundle of lavender to their chest, muttering that its scent will keep death away. Whether it worked or not, the comfort was real. But the dread was real too. Shadows stretch across the walls, and every sound seems sharper. The rasp of breath, the rattle of a cough, the groan of someone turning restlessly. Historians still argue whether families understood the true causes of plague and fever, or whether their explanations, curses, bad air, divine punishment, were all they could cling to in the absence of medicine. Either way, the fear was powerful enough to make every night feel like a test. Would you wake in the morning, or would the night claim you? You roll slightly on your straw, feeling the roughness scratch against your arm. The discomfort grounds you, reminding you that not every cough meant disaster. Fevers came and went. Children recovered. Adults returned to work. But when plague stalked the land, it was different. Entire households collapsed. Neighbors vanished overnight, and the silence of streets spoke louder than bells. You breathe more deeply, grateful that for you, tonight, it is only memory. Yet the weight of that past lingers. The fire spits once, sending sparks upward. You imagine a mother leaning forward to add more wood, her face drawn, her eyes hollow with worry. She watches her children twist in their sleep, unsure whether to shake them awake or let them drift deeper. A father kneels in the corner, whispering prayers, his hands clutching a rosary worn smooth from use. The room is thick with smoke and fear, and yet there is nothing to do but wait. You close your eyes, and in that half-sleep you feel the heat of fever yourself. Your skin prickles, your body heavy, as though something invisible presses down on you. You murmur nonsense words, the kind that slip out in delirium, and in your dream you see shadows bending into shapes that whisper warnings. You open your eyes quickly, heart pounding, and remind yourself it is only imagination. But for those before you, it was reality, and nightmares blurred too easily with illness. Humor, faint though it is, still finds a way into such nights. You imagine a father joking weakly that the rooster should crow softer, lest he wake the fever before dawn. Or a grandmother insisting that garlic tucked under the pillow will cure the cough, while everyone else groans at the smell. Human beings cling to jokes even in the darkest nights, perhaps because laughter is the only defense against despair. You smile faintly, despite yourself, at the thought of a sick room where someone still manages to chuckle. The night deepens. The coughs fade for now, replaced by shallow breathing. The room exhales together, as though exhausted from its own fear. You settle deeper into your blanket, letting the weight of the moment pass. Outside, the wind rattles the shutters, indifferent to the worries within. The rooster, mercifully, remains silent. Historians still argue how people balanced fear and faith in such times. Some chronicles describe entire families sleeping in churches, seeking divine protection under stone arches. Others tell of villages fleeing altogether, abandoning homes at the first sign of plague. The debate continues, but for you lying here now, it hardly matters. What matters is the heaviness of the room, the closeness of bodies, the fragility of life when sleep and fever share the same bed. You breathe in, the scent of smoke and herbs filling your lungs. You breathe out, slower, softer, letting your body ease again into rest. The fire glows faintly, the shadows soften, and though unease lingers, your eyes grow heavy once more. You surrender to sleep, aware that centuries ago, others surrendered too, with prayers on their lips, herbs on their pillows, and hope that dawn would come. The rooster shifts faintly outside, feathers rustling, a reminder that morning waits, and with that reminder, you drift into slumber again, the fear easing into dreams. The sound of water slapping against wood greets you as you turn over in your straw bed. But this is no cottage, no cloister, no smoky tavern. In your mind, the walls fall away, and suddenly you are swaying, gently at first, then more insistently. The creak of timber surrounds you, the smell of salt brine fills your nose, and the faint cry of gulls drifts through the air. You are aboard a medieval ship, and tonight, your sleep is cradled not by earth, but by the sea. Life on the water was relentless. A mainstream historical fact steadies itself here. Sailors in the late Middle Ages often slept in hammocks or makeshift rope slings stretched between beams, an innovation borrowed from seafaring cultures and gradually adopted on European ships. These swinging beds kept bodies off the damp deck, reducing sickness and saving space in crowded holds. You imagine yourself lowering carefully into one, clutching the ropes with nervous hands, the canvas taut beneath you, swaying with the rhythm of the ship. The sensation is both soothing and unsettling. The hammock rocks as the vessel pitches, carrying you back and forth like a cradle. Your body wants to surrender, but your mind whispers unease. What if you tip out? What if the ropes snap? You picture sailors laughing as you tumble to the floor, cursing as your blanket tangles around your legs. Humor lives even here, where exhaustion is constant, and teasing your shipmates is as common as sharing bread. Still, you pull the rough blanket higher, letting the sway lull you. Around you, the hold is packed with men. They lie in their own hammocks, some muttering in sleep, others snoring like thunder. The air is damp, heavy with sweat, salt, and tar. A rat skitters across a beam, pausing briefly before disappearing into shadows. This is no quiet chamber. This is a floating world where every sound is amplified by wood and water. A quirky tidbit drifts into memory. Some sailors swore hammocks were cursed. They claimed that the swaying motion mimicked the movement of coffins lowered into the sea, an omen that unsettled even the bravest. Others argued the opposite, that hammocks were gifts of mercy, sparing backs from hard decks and saving lives when waves crashed violently. You smile faintly, rocking in your imagined sling, wondering whether you would have been a believer in curses or comforts. The ship groans as it tilts, water splashing against its hull. You grip the edge of your hammock, heart quickening. The sea is vast, and danger is constant, storms, leaks, even pirates. Sleep is fragile here, stolen in snatches between watches. Historians still argue whether sailors truly adapted to this rhythm, or whether they lived in a state of permanent exhaustion, always half alert, half dreaming. Either way, your body understands. Rest when you can, however you can. You let your eyes close, and for a moment, the sway becomes peaceful. You imagine stars overhead, brighter even than those of the open field. Navigators study them, reading directions from their patterns, while you drift below, lulled by their distant glow. The connection comforts you. The same stars that guided pilgrims on land, now guiding sailors across seas. Their stories whisper overhead, while your body sinks deeper into its swinging bed. But sleep does not come without interruption. A shout echoes from above deck. The heavy tread of boots follows, and suddenly a lantern is thrust into the hold. Faces stir, groans rise, and men shift in hammocks. The watch has changed, and some must climb out, rubbing eyes, adjusting belts, cursing softly as they stagger toward duty. Others roll over, grateful it is not their turn. You remain still, rocking gently, the commotion passing by like waves. The humor returns in small moments. A sailor tumbles gracelessly from his hammock, landing with a thud that sparks muffled laughter. Another clings dramatically to his ropes, swearing he was mid-dream of a noble feast before being rudely awakened. Even in exhaustion, men find ways to amuse themselves, their jokes drifting through the hold like smoke. You grin faintly, realizing that humor is the only thing sturdier than the ship itself. You breathe slowly, letting the rhythm of the water match your heartbeat. The ship creaks, the hammock sways, and despite the noise and dampness, your body softens into rest. You picture sailors long before you, sleeping the same way, rocked by the same sea, muttering the same complaints. Their lives were hard, their beds unsteady, but even they found moments of peace in the endless rocking of the waves. Historians still argue whether hammocks truly improved health aboard ships. Some claim they reduced the spread of disease by keeping sailors separate, while others suggest the damp canvas bred as many problems as it solved. You roll slightly, feeling the imagined dampness cling to your blanket, and chuckle softly. Perhaps both sides are right. Hammocks were better than wood, but never perfect. Nothing in this world is. The sea sighs against the hull, the lantern dims, and the hold settles once again. The snores return, the ship steadies, and your hammock cradles you back into calm. You breathe deeply, salt air filling your lungs, the rhythm of waves rocking you toward dreams. Perhaps tonight you will dream of land, of firm ground beneath your feet, of straw and feathers instead of rope and canvas. Or perhaps you will dream of the sea itself, vast and endless, carrying you forever. Either way, the hammock holds. The ship sails on, and you sleep, swaying gently in the embrace of water and wood, a sailor among sailors, bound by the same fragile rhythm of rest at sea. The ship fades, its swaying hammock dissolving into stillness, and once again, you are back on land, lying in the scratch of straw. Your mind wandering into the world of those who claimed to understand why some nights blessed you with rest, and others cursed you with wakefulness. Scholars and physicians fill your imagination now. Men in long robes hunched over manuscripts, ink-stained fingers tapping against the margins, their eyes gleaming with the certainty that your dreams, your waking hours, even your late-night indigestion, could all be explained by a theory as old as antiquity: the four humors. You shift on your bed, listening to the straw creak, and imagine sitting across from such a physician. His table is cluttered with jars of herbs, flasks of syrupy liquids, and a mortar still dusted with the remains of ground poppy. He looks at you solemnly and declares that your poor sleep is not the fault of roosters, noisy taverns, or swaying hammocks, but of imbalance within your body. Too much black bile, perhaps, or not enough phlegm. The words sound strange, almost laughable to modern ears, but they were the pillars of medicine for centuries. A mainstream historical fact steadies itself here. Medieval physicians, drawing on the teachings of Galen and earlier Greek sources, believed that health depended on the balance of 4 bodily fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Each humor was tied to elements, temperaments, and even times of day. Sleep, they claimed, came most easily when the humors were in harmony. Insomnia, or nightmares, were the result of imbalance. Too much heat in the blood, too much cold in the phlegm, or a sluggish excess of black bile weighing down the mind. You nod gravely at the imagined physician, though inside you smirk. He prescribes a light supper of lettuce and a cup of warm milk to cool your humors. He advises against pork fat before bed, lest it heat your blood and bring fiery dreams. He recommends gentle exercise in the afternoon, no straining at dusk, and above all, moderation in wine. You can almost hear his voice lowering conspiratorially as he warns you that overindulgence in strong drink will cause visions of devils cavorting in your sleep. You smile faintly in the dark, amused at the timelessness of that advice. The quirky tidbit you recall is even stranger. Some physicians insisted that the position in which you lay down affected the humors. Sleeping on your right side was said to aid digestion, while sleeping on your left risked flooding your body with cold phlegm. Lying on your back invited demons to press against your chest, a vivid description that modern minds might recognize as sleep paralysis. You roll slightly onto your side, chuckling at the thought that even your posture was once a matter of medical debate. But debate there was, endless and earnest. Historians still argue whether these theories genuinely helped, or whether they were merely comforting frameworks in a world with few remedies. Did physicians truly improve sleep with their dietary rules and herbal drafts? Or did patients simply believe enough to ease their anxieties? The line between medicine and ritual was blurred, and perhaps that was the point. In a time of uncertainty, explanations, even questionable ones, offered the illusion of control. You picture students in a university hall, the air cold, their breath misting as they listen to a lecture on humors. The master gestures toward a diagram of a body, pointing to the liver, the spleen, the stomach, describing how each organ produces and governs fluids that must be balanced. The students scribble dutifully, some wide-eyed with reverence, others suppressing yawns after nights spent in taverns. The lecture stretches on, as endless as the night itself, and you smile, realizing how many fell asleep during lessons on sleep itself. The fire in your own chamber sputters, as though in agreement. You shift again, straw poking through your blanket, and imagine the remedies that might be offered to you now. A syrup of poppy mixed with honey, thick and bitter. A pillow stuffed with lettuce leaves, said to cool the body. A charm whispered by a learned physician who insists that words, too, have humoral power, shaping the body through sound. You close your eyes, amused by the absurdity, yet tempted by the comfort. Humor persists here as well. You imagine a weary patient confessing to a physician that he dreams every night of roasted geese. The physician strokes his beard and gravely declares it an excess of yellow bile, recommending fewer onions at supper. Or another patient who snores loudly, disturbing his household, is told it is the fault of sluggish phlegm, and is instructed to chew fennel seeds before bed. You laugh softly into your blanket, recognizing that even centuries ago, people sought medical excuses for their ordinary quirks. Yet there is poetry in it too. The idea that your body is a delicate balance of elements, your sleep a reflection of harmony or discord, your dreams a mirror of hidden tides. There is something strangely beautiful in such a view. Perhaps it is not entirely wrong, you think. Modern science may scoff at bile and phlegm, but it too speaks of balance, of hormones and rhythms, of chemical messengers whispering through the night. The metaphors have changed, but the yearning for explanation remains the same. The candle stub at your side flares once, then dies, leaving only the faint glow of embers. You lie back, staring into the darkness, and imagine those scholars still hunched over their books, their pens scratching as they argue about which humor rules the midnight hour. You breathe slowly, letting your own humors settle, amused that you are now complicit in their theory simply by acknowledging it. The straw rustles beneath you as your breathing steadies. You turn once more onto your right side, just to humor the physician's advice, and allow yourself to feel the weight of centuries pressing down gently. Countless sleepers before you lay in the same position, hoping their humors aligned, hoping their dreams were gentle, hoping morning would come. The wind rattles the shutters, the rooster stirs faintly outside, and you feel yourself drifting. Whether from humors, herbs, or habit, it hardly matters. Sleep comes, inevitable and insistent, carrying you into the quiet where scholars and patients alike have always gone. The night has grown long, and your body is heavy, every shift in the straw sounding louder than before. The air is thick with the last embers of the hearth, glowing faintly, their warmth more memory than reality. Shadows reach across the walls, long and soft, as though they too are tired of stretching. You breathe in, slow and deep, and for a moment the centuries fall away. You are only a sleeper, lying at the edge of dawn, waiting for dreams to dissolve into daylight. You remember the fields where you lay beneath the stars, the inns crowded with snores, the cloisters where chants echoed against stone, the feather beds of kings, and the hammocks swaying above dark water. All of it lingers, fragments of nights shared across lives you will never meet. The rooster stirs faintly outside, not yet ready to announce the morning. The world holds its breath. You close your eyes again, letting the straw cradle you, its scratch softened by the weight of exhaustion. It is quiet now, though never truly silent. Somewhere a dog sighs, a neighbor coughs, a monk far away begins his vigil. Sleep is not one continuous stream, but a patchwork stitched together by sounds, smells, interruptions. You feel it in your bones, the way the medieval night was shaped not by comfort, but by endurance. And yet, there is something strangely tender in it. People prayed together, shared warmth, whispered dreams. Fear of illness, fire, or spirits might have shadowed them, but so did laughter, jokes, and stubborn resilience. A quirky tidbit slips into your mind once more. Some believed that if you placed your shoes neatly by the bed, pointing them toward the door, nightmares would walk out rather than stay with you. You glance toward your own shoes, amused by the thought of dreams lining up politely to leave at dawn. Whether superstition or comfort, the gesture makes sense. Everyone longs for control over the mysteries of the night. Historians still argue whether medieval sleep was truly worse than ours, or simply different, a rhythm more natural to firelight and darkness. Perhaps broken rest was not a failing, but an adaptation. Perhaps the long watch in the middle of the night was a gift, a time to breathe, to think, to speak softly when the world was quiet. You let the thoughts settle, your own eyelids heavy, your breathing slowing to match the hush of the room. The embers shift, collapsing into ash, and the last thread of smoke curls upward. Your straw bed creaks as you roll once more, trying to find a hollow that fits. The shadows stretch longer, then fade, their edges softening as dawn begins its slow approach. You smile faintly, knowing that across centuries, others smiled too, grateful simply to have made it through another night. Sleep lingers, not gone, not fully here, but enough to remind you that rest, however broken, always returns. The rooster finally crows, his voice cracking with impatience. The world begins to stir. Yet you remain still, eyes closed, body reluctant to rise. For a moment longer, you linger in the night, in the shared history of straw beds, candles, dreams, and whispered prayers. And then you let it fade, carried gently toward the light of morning. The story has stretched itself long, and now the edges begin to soften, the shapes fading like chalk in gentle rain. Your breathing steadies, each inhale drawn deeper, each exhale trailing slower, as though the body itself wishes to blur into the rhythm of sleep. The straw bed beneath you fades from scratchy and awkward into something weightless, more like a cloud than a bundle of stalks, supporting you with quiet ease. The sounds of the medieval world, roosters, bells, chants, firewood sighing, are drifting away, one by one, dissolving into the background until only stillness remains. You are safe now, held softly by the night. The fears of illness, fire, or restless neighbors belong to other centuries. What remains is only calm. The stars that once guided pilgrims and sailors now shine only for you, steady and patient, their light gentle enough to quiet every thought. Each muscle in your body unwinds, each corner of your mind loosens, until even the act of listening feels too heavy to continue. And so, the night closes with reassurance. The candles have gone dark, the rooster is quiet again, and the shadows have faded into the kind of silence that promises rest. Let your eyes sink deeper, let your breath lengthen, and allow yourself to drift as countless others have drifted before you. The story has ended, but the dream continues, and you are carried into it, slow, steady, and calm.